the Director of Aftercare and Community Engagement for Finding Kids, which is an organization that hires private investigators to work with families whose children go missing. And I do all the aftercare supports for families while their kids are missing, and then once they're recovered and return home. So I'm doing that work. I had a 33-year career with Los Angeles County Probation Department, where the last 12 years I had the privilege of being the director of our child trafficking unit. I retired in 2023. I went back to the County of Los Angeles under the Board of Supervisors in 2024 to lead the 5-year strategic plan to prevent and address child trafficking. And a lot of that focus is getting into schools to really educate young people and teach and school personnel about the issue. So this is, I really appreciate the invite to come and spend some time with you guys today. So very involved in the trafficking space, have been for quite a while. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll start there. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let me see if I can, okay, here we go. I'm trying to get this screen up here. Okay, very good. All right. So what I'd like to do, and I don't even know that I can see the chat while I'm doing this. I don't really ever work on Teams, but what I would love to have people do is, just so I kind of get an idea of who is in the room, I'd love for people to kind of come off mic and just tell me, a few people, we don't need all 20, but just a few people who are willing to do that. Just, you know, the number of child trafficking, number of hours of training you've had before today, because I'm just going to get a feel for who's in the room. And also one thing you're hoping to get out of today or curious about, and what part of the state do you work in? So if anybody, if I could get like 2 or 3 people to do that, that'd be great.
I'll chime in. Jeremy Silva, Nevada Department of Education. I did training through Truckers Against Driving,
Awesome.
Trafficking. Did that one. I don't remember how long it was, but I think it was more like a streamlined version that I did. It was like a couple hours at a conference. I'm hoping to learn more about best practices and what to look for.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
So I'm Lori Owen. I'm in Las Vegas at Discovery Charter School. I haven't had any training, so anything I get is going to be more than I know. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
I'm Joseph Palmaffi, assistant principal at Somerset Long Mountain. I'm like Lori. I've been to the national conferences, but nothing specific about child trafficking.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you. I'll pick on a few more of you later on in the presentation. So just a couple of things. Whoops, I guess I'm not going to hit my slide that way. One of the things I want to always kind of preface as we get started here is that I'm not going to lie, there will be things that I'm going to talk about today that are going to probably be tough to hear. And so make sure that you take care of yourself, and if you need to step out, take a minute, do whatever, totally fine with that. Just make sure that, you're taking care of yourself during this time. Can people still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I can't see any of you. Again, I'm not sure how to navigate where I can see people, so I'm just talking to a screen. So if you have any questions, I may ask the 2 hosts today to let me know if there's anything in the chat that's coming up for people or whatnot, because like I say, I can't really see much of anything while I'm doing this. So I'm gonna count on you to do that for me.
Michelle, the only thing
Yes.
is we see your screen, but it's not in presentation mode.
Okay, I can do that. Hang on.
Standard, so we're seeing the whole
Yep.
the whole screen and not just the individual slides.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. That better?
Yes.
There you go. Yes, we see
All right.
the slide now.
Okay. Perfect.
Very good.
Okay. All right. So I want to just start off by saying what we're going to include in the presentation today. I'm really going to talk a lot about basic child trafficking awareness and what schools can do, kind of a call to action and more just really awareness building and what you might see. I'm also going to I'm going to show a few videos that will, kind of highlight survivor voices. Because I think sometimes the best way to learn is from those who have been impacted by exploitation in the various forms that it happens. And so we will be sharing some of those stories. I will also say that under the umbrella of child trafficking, there is sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and child labor trafficking by forced criminality. Today's presentation is really going to focus on child sex trafficking. I will say that I am not the subject matter expert for labor trafficking of children. I know about it, but that's not really where my expertise lies. So there is a lot of different ways. Under labor trafficking, basically, well, let me just go back. When you have children who are impacted by commercial sexual exploitation or sex trafficking, force, fraud, or coercion does not have to be proven. Just by the nature of you being under the age of 18 and being a victim of sex trafficking, that's enough to do a prosecution, to consider you a sex trafficking victim. Under labor trafficking, you have to prove force, fraud, or coercion, even though you're children. There's a lot of things around forced criminality. I will tell you that we've had lots of young women, particularly that have been involved in forced criminality situations by their exploiters, anywhere from, stealing different things. Because again, exploiters sometimes will let young people know, hey, you're getting a lighter sentence. They may not even lock you up or arrest you. I'll go to prison. So I need you to do this for me. So it's under the coerciveness of like an exploiter. And so they're involved sometimes in those kind of things, all the way up to, we had a 14-year-old, unfortunately, that was in a car at one point with her exploiter, and they were on one of the main tracks or blades in Los Angeles called Figueroa, which some of you may be familiar with. There was a big article that came out in the New York Times a few months ago about that. And he basically handed her a gun and said, kill that person right there. So again, she's the one that pulls the trigger. She's the one that gets arrested for killing someone. And the exploiter, because again, she may get less time, whatever the situation may be. So there also is this issue what people are really trying to talk about and spend more time talking about is this issue of forced criminality. So those are also different subjects. If you're interested in that you could find and look online. There's a lot of different videos and things about that. But for today's course, it's going to really be around commercial sexual exploitation of children or sex trafficking.
Michelle, we do
Yes.
have someone with their hand up. If you
Okay.
can answer the question.
Sure.
Can you unmute yourself and ask the question? Looks like they put their hand down.
Oh.
Okay, I don't see their hand up anymore. They must have changed their mind.
Okay.
We'll keep you posted if we see anything else. And just know
Okay.
that I am having Wi-Fi issues. So if you see me pop in and out, you'll know why. And please make sure to sign in. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to play a little bit of a longer video for you. It's about 7.5 minutes. This is of a young woman, probably the first young woman that I ever got to know when I started doing the work around child trafficking in Los Angeles. And she's a survivor of trafficking. And I really think the way she presents her story really gives you a lot of the dynamics about what a lot of our young people are experiencing. And so I kind of want to start off with this video. And again, going back to the self-care, I'm, going to be honest in saying there are places that within this video that may be hard to hear. It could be a little emotional for some. So I want to start off by playing this. Let me know if you can't hear it.
My name is Ori. I am bold, brave, blunt, willing to fight my hardest, and that comes from a lot of the things that I've been through in my life. I have not always been this strong. I got bullied a lot. I was always either this weird kid or somehow didn't fit in. I was born in Chowchilla State Prison. My mother was fighting murder at the time when she had me. At 2 days, I was adopted by a single mother who worked 3 jobs in order to provide for me. I had a very normal childhood in the very beginning up until the age of 8 when I was molested by a family friend. By the time I was about 9.5, 10 years old, I experienced a rape, and there was no justice that was ever served. And the cases were dropped. DCFS got involved very, very minimum. I didn't receive any counseling. My mother never had a conversation with me about it. I think it was very hard for her. So it was all these feelings of like insecurity and feeling like I don't belong, guilt and shame and dirtiness was bottling up inside. You know, I always say that like kids, when they run away, they're not running to something, they're running from something. Anywhere was better than my home. Like anywhere was safer than my home. Anywhere where someone would just notice me and just ask me, was I okay, was gonna be better than going through this. I ended up running away and met a friend. We went to this house, which was like a drug house. She left me and said, I'll be right back. In that house was a male sitting on the couch right next to me and another beautiful woman in the back. For the first time in my life, somebody asked me, was I okay? After the rapes, after the molestation, after all the bullying, somebody finally asked me, was I okay? I told that man my life story in 30 seconds. And he didn't have to come and look for me. Like he didn't have to come hunt like how normal a lot of these traffickers do. I fell right on his doorstep. I was a kid in need. I needed shelter. I needed clothes. I needed food. And I was going to need someone to take care of me because I was only 11 years old. And I just remember this look in his eye was just like this. I got her. And I spoke to the woman that I seen. I remember her asking me and talking to me and sharing her story about how she was molested by her stepfather and things like that. So now I'm feeling like, oh, now we have something in common. She's just like me. He said, well, I'm getting ready to take her to work. And we got out there. We were on Long Beach Boulevard. And I remember him telling me about the life. And he started to groom me. And then that grooming process is he was preparing me to be trafficked. And I remember when she came back, he said, you're going to show her what to do. She's going to go with you. And I remember just freaking out in the back seat, like scared. He got out, was yelling, why are you crying? And he hit me. I want to just go home. I want to go home. And he was just like, where are you going to go? Nobody wants you. And I believed those lies. And he grabbed me by my hair and dragged me down the street. My knees were scraping the floor. It was other women out there. Nobody did anything. When you have been forced to sleep with 7 to 15 men and be raped and be 11 years old, I was like slowly dying. And after the first night, you suppress those feelings because any inch of hope that you have, any sense of I can get out, any feeling of there's a God, any feeling of I don't deserve this, you get beat. You ain't gonna survive out there. I actually grew up in the church. My grandmother was a deaconess, so I knew of God. As I got older though, and after the things that took place, I became very distant. Like there couldn't have been no God, like in allowing someone to do this to this kid. There couldn't be this God that, you know, at 11 years old sitting in court and mom says, I don't want her anymore. Like there couldn't have been a God. Nowhere to go. No family wanted to take you in. Like there couldn't have been a God. And that was hard for me. Being on the streets and having to survive, and I'm thinking about right now, how am I gonna get through this day? So God was just, for me, he was very far. I was willing to be confident, be okay, and be raped 7 to 15 times a night instead of suffering the consequences of being alone again. And it becomes normal. And if you think about an adult's normal life, go to work every day, tuck their children in at night, My normal was if I didn't make enough money for daddy and make the quota that he set for me, I was getting beat upside my head with a 45mm gun. My normal was not being tucked in at night. It wasn't reading a bedtime story. My normal was every single day waking up and making money for a man that I never received a dollar for. Being told what to eat, how to talk, when you was gonna sleep, where you was gonna go. That was my normal. My childhood, I didn't have a childhood. It was gone. That was my normal from 11 to 15 years old. By the time I was 12 years old, within a year, I was already raped over 4,000 times. It took me to be 4.5 years in the life until I was 15 years old for someone to finally step up and do something. And that was a man. His name is Jim Carson. And he was the first person in my life to tell me that I was a victim. It was never a choice. It's not a choice for these kids. Whether it was an influence, someone influenced them, whether it was somebody physically forced them into it, whether it was their circumstances, it's not a choice. It was not my choice. I didn't ask to be trafficked. I didn't wake up and that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I wanted to be the president of the United States, the first female president. There are children whose dreams and innocence was stolen and snatched from them. Children who need someone to fight for them because they can't fight for themselves. Children who need a voice for people to stand up and be a voice for them because they don't have it and they've lost it. Like, that's what organizations like Saving Innocence does. Showing up when they don't expect you to. And saying, I care about you, I'm here for you, and I'm not giving up on you. That's what these kids need. I was starting to see what hope looked like. There were these labels that were starting to be torn off me. This weak kid, like this angry kid, this bad kid. And I was starting to learn who Ori was. That weird kid, it like means so much to me because that weird kid, like, is normal. Like, I was okay. Like, I can be her. Like, I can be friendly and not be called weird. I can be the life of the party and say crazy things and have this sense of humor without being afraid of what people are gonna think of me. I don't let my past define me because it's only a small part of my life. It doesn't define me because that's not who I am. To me, being bold is living life and not caring what people think. Like, being fearless of sharing what I've been through and what God has got me through. And that doesn't define me. Everything I went through in life was in order to be able to help someone else. I got hired on a Saving Innocence about 1.5 years ago. So I go into the juvenile halls, the same juvenile halls I used to be at. And I get to work with the kids on prevention work. It's just this amazing feeling that I get to go back in the very places of where I found hope at and work with kids. I get to be that person that I didn't have when I was a kid. I'm not just this victim of sex trafficking. It's only a part of my story. That's all.
Okay, I told you that wasn't going to be easy. Ori today is as a powerhouse. Like I said, it took her about 7 years to get through her journey to where she really started to come out on the other side. In fact, this is kind of a little bit of an older picture, but we are attending her wedding in May in Dallas, Texas. And like I said, she has really come full circle and gives back. And she recently took in 2 foster kids, and she's just created a beautiful family and is gonna, living her best life. So again, it really took a lot of people to step up and step in for her, but she's doing really well. So a little bit about what the explanation about the commercial sexual exploitation. It's sexual activity involving a child in exchange of something of value or promise. So it could be money, it could be a place to sleep, it could be basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, whatnot, but they're exchanging sex in exchange for something of value. The child is treated as a commercial and sexual object, and commercial sexual exploitation is a form of violence against children. In commercial sexual exploitation, there are 3 people involved. There's the youth who's being exploited, could be a girl, a boy, transgender youth. Then there's an exploiter or a trafficker who can either be male or female. And then there's the buyers or the sex buyers, or sometimes they're called Johns. And so really and that's what the commercial sexual is, that commercial piece where there's an exchange of money and a third party buyer. One of the things that we're learning in this day and age, and this is not a slide that I've used 10 years ago, but because we have a lot of these social media sites or different things around like OnlyFans or different places, kids sometimes today are looking to other solutions than having an exploiter where they will have regulars on a phone or different sex buyers, you know what I mean? So they may have had sex buyers that they were engaging with when they were being exploited and had an exploiter, but if they've moved on or done something different, then, you know, one of the things is there doesn't always have to be a trafficker, but there's always a buyer. So a lot of the efforts today are really trying to look at buyers, because if we don't have people who are purchasing sex, we don't have a child sex trafficking issue. It's really about that, around that supply and demand. There's also a lot that happens around survival sex. You may have heard that term or may not have heard that term. And that really is youth who are engaging in situations where, again, they don't have an exploiter. So and a lot of young people, like I know in Los Angeles, probably in Las Vegas, I'm sure, and throughout Nevada, is where you may have young people on the street, you know, that have been kicked out of their home for whatever, that are homeless, runaways, things like that, that may be exchanging sex for food, clothing, shelter. And they may not have that third party exploiter that's basically doing the transactions between the buyer and the youth. So they call it, kind of the term they use it is called survival sex. And that's when someone doesn't have an exploiter. And I would tell you that 98% of the time, young people will have an exploiter. It would be just like saying, you know, you have a gang in a certain area and one of the gang members says, I'm going to sell dope on my own. And usually it's regulated by the gang, you know, in those areas. So, you know, exploiters usually like to regulate what's going on, to have some control over it. And obviously the profits involved in that and whatnot. Language. I think that's one of the things that we did right off top. Again, for me, I always worked in the probation department. I always worked with young women, especially that were arrested for prostitution. And I know we did a lot of like finger wagging, like, hey, there's better things to do than sell your body. What are you doing? And had no idea what was going on, because back then we thought of them as teenage prostitutes, underage prostitutes, things like that. And I think I think language in so many reasons is just so important, because that, you know, young people, when we're doing that, are being blamed and shamed for something that we're saying they chose to do, right? Instead of something that is happening to them. So we really tried to change language about this whole thing about there's no such thing as a child prostitute. And I really think when we come at it in a different way, for young people especially, is it gives them, I think they feel like we're more empathetic and more trying to understand and being more engaging instead of shaming and those kind of things. And it really reframes the issue that this is a form of child abuse, and that young people are, deserve supportive services instead of just arrests and jail sentences. And it really just helps reframe the issue around what we're talking about here. Some of the myths, and a lot of this I'm going to go through fairly quickly because I'm trying to load a lot of information for you over the next hour. But some of the myths that are out there that are fairly common is, again, this issue of choice. And when you when you heard the story of Ori and she talked about choice, it's like, this wasn't my choice. There were a lot of factors and vulnerability that were going on in Ori's life, where she then started to do this runaway behavior, right? And I will tell you one story of one young woman that we started working with, one of the staff, and she was 14 years old again, and she was on probation, And as a probation officer, she has conditions of probation, and one of them is to not run away or to be home at 6 or those kinds of things. And she was a kid that ran away a lot. And so the probation officer is looking at her runaway behavior. We really weren't trying to figure out why the runaway behavior. We were just saying, hey, you're violating your conditions of probation. So therefore, we're going to remove you from home because you're not doing well at home. We're going to put you into foster care and see if we can help get you to settle down, basically. And then when she went into foster care, she continued to run. And then we had our aha moment that she was being exploited, at which time she told us, I was being exploited when I was running away from home. You guys just weren't paying attention, right? And then as she starts to talk about a little bit more about why she's running away from home, she let us know that at the age of 7 to the age of 12, 13, she was being sexually abused by her stepfather in the basement of her home weekly. So, at 8, she's not going to run away. At 9, she's not probably going to run away. At 12, she might find somebody else who's also got some issues. And she met a friend and they went to this park. And, so did she make a choice to run away from home? Yes. What was the alternative? To stay at home where abuse continued, right? So yes, she did make a choice. That night in the park, it got dark. She got scared, so she went back home. The abuse continued. About 2 months later, she ran away again, and her and another friend met at the park, so now she had company. And about 2 days later, they were approached by a young man who offered them a place to stay. It sounds like you guys are hungry. What are you guys doing out here? It's not safe. All that kind of stuff, right? So, and offered and said, hey, come with me and I'll help you. So did they make a choice to go with that person? Yes. But what was the alternative, right? So really when we talk about choice, and in my 15, 16 years of doing the child trafficking work, I can promise you that no young person chooses to be raped and beaten and have all these bad things happen night after night. Sometimes, again, they get caught up, but there are choices that are made along the way. So again, when we first learned about the issue, that was one of the things that was always in our minds. Well, they're choosing to do this, because a lot of the young people would say, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I want to. And sometimes that's the easiest part of themselves to show than to say, no, I'm hurting. Like, I don't want to do this, right? And it creates for them a little bit of vulnerability. The other thing is that exploited children and youth make lots of money. You also heard Ori say that, she didn't make $1. I've heard young people say, well, they take care of me. I don't want to live in foster care, or I don't want to live at home because this is going on, or my parents are too strict, or whatever's going on. And so I make money because I'm paying for my room and board. They feed me, they give me a place to sleep, all those kinds of things. But they're not opening up a bank account and putting in thousands and thousands of dollars a week. That's not happening. So that's really kind of a little bit more of a myth on that side. Also, one of the things that I've been really vocal about, and rightfully so, but again, just giving that story about the young woman that ran away from home and went to the park. And we didn't really have our aha moment until we removed her from home and put her in foster care, and she continued to run. Yes, young people are being trafficked out of foster care, no doubt. They absolutely are. But in a lot of the studies that we've had in Los Angeles year after year, and some of the protocols we've put in place, of the calls going to the Child Protection Hotline through our law enforcement first responder protocol for trafficked children, year after year, after 11 years, it stays the same, as upwards of 73% of those kids they laid there where they were sleeping at night was at home. So yes, and so this to me is a big prevention effort, that if we can get out in front of it, when things are starting to break down in the home or in their community or whatnot, then we're not removing when things get too bad and putting them in foster care, where sometimes that stuff continues to happen. So yes, we need to be focused on it. My philosophy and my message is no matter where the young person lays their head at night, we need to be aware of what's happening with young people and trying to be supportive and helpful up front. Another thing, again, that when I ask this question sometimes of people when I do training, like, give me some of the myths, give me some of the things that you're curious about or what you want to know about. A lot of the feedback I get is around girls, that like it's only happening to girls. And I will tell you that the first probably 7 years of the work that I was doing in Los Angeles, all we saw were girls. So everything we did was around girls. All of our images, all of our training, all of our pronouns, everything was around girls. And then we started to have men speak up and say, what about the boys? Or you didn't think about us? You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of, and I think one of the things is when you're not looking for something, you don't see it. And so now that we've been doing a lot more work around boys, it's, some people say that in some of the studies that they've looked, if you look at homelessness, that there are far many more young men who are homeless than there are young women. And so, how are they getting their basic needs met? You know what I mean? What are they exchanging for that? And so really there's a part of a movement now that's really looking to all genders, all young people. What creates vulnerability? So again, I'm just trying to paint a big picture. I'm not going into any of this like really in depth. So if you do have questions, please put it in the chat and we'll have Lydia bring those out. So some of the things that create vulnerability. Does anybody recognize this at all? What is happening in this photo? Anybody want to come off mic? Anybody had any personal experience about what you're seeing here?
Yeah. Appears in each picture, the parents are trying to get the cell phone away for whatever purpose, probably to see who they're chatting with.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say that, when we, I have never, I was talking to a parent yesterday and I'm like, I don't even know how parents parent today with the cell phones and the social media and just all the vulnerabilities around that. I mean, that could be a whole 2-hour training in and of itself, right? That I'm sure it's probably every parent's worst nightmare, but also a good thing because that's kind of how we stay connected in a moment. I'm back in my day. I'm 62 years old, so I'll say that. But when I left for junior high school for 7th grade, and my parents didn't see me, know what I was doing during the day or how I was getting home until I came home that night, right? Like there was no tracking of me. There was none of that stuff. But today there's good things and there's bad things. But that's one of the things that I see a lot with some of our families that we work with through the Finding Kids work is just all the angst and stuff around cell phones, right? And like I say, it's just I don't know what the answer is to that, but I do know that a lot of kids, just because of the fighting and and you're right. I would say that probably a lot of the times they're talking to young people, they're talking to people that they really don't know who they are, and it puts them at really high risk. And this again just goes to show, this is a thing that was put out by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Again, when we started really looking at this issue, is meets 10-year-old Becky's 12-year-old internet friend, right? Like when you're talking to someone over the internet, you really don't know who they are, you know what I mean? And how they're coming across, because you can hide behind the internet. One of the law enforcement officers in Orange County who does a lot of work in this area, he's like known as the cyber cop. He was involved in a study that they did across the country, and a couple of the stats that came out that I thought were just staggering was that 80% of kids said that their parents had no rules around their social media use. And that would probably be me, because I don't do social media and I wouldn't even know what the rules should be, right? So that was one of the things that came out of it. And the other thing is that 1 in 10 kids said that they would tell their parent if they were a victim of online abuse, if they were being bullied online, or if anything was going with them online. And a lot of in interviewing those kids, and the reason why is because their fear of the parent taking the phone, right? Like, oh, I'll fix that. Here, give me your phone, right? Like problem solved. And so a lot of times what he speaks about is just really having to find a way to parent with grace. Before you ever give a young person a cell phone, you know what I mean? You're talking to them at a young age about what the rules are going to be, and you start setting those up now and things like that. So, but that does create a vulnerability, is just this whole social media world that we're in today. I should have put a slide here, but I didn't, but I'm going to talk through it real quick. We we had a presentation with an Internet Crimes Against Children officer out of San Jose, and he showed us a picture of 10 or 12 young men out of the Western states, to include Nevada, Arizona, California, just all the Western states. There were 12 young men, and he said, I'm going to tell you what these 12 young men have in common. Each one of these young men, within a 24-hour period, got a friend request by someone they thought was a girl. And all these 12 young men were seniors in high school. They were going somewhere on some kind of a college scholarship to play football, athletics, to go to medical school, I mean, whatever the academics, whatever it was, they were going to go, they had scholarships to go to school. They also came from middle-class families, right? And they all got a text message or a friend message with someone they thought, wanted to friend them, female. They exchanged nude photos, and then they got the ransom note, right? Then it was like the sextortion stuff, right? And then they said, okay, if you don't send me $2,000 by 4 o'clock today, I'm going to put all your stuff out on social media. I'm going to send it to your college. I'm going to send it to your parents. I did that whole thing, which I'm sure you've heard about. And within that 24-hour period of time, all 12 of those young men took their life. They took their life because of shame, because of guilt, because of how could I be so stupid? They left notes. It was heartbreaking. So a lot of it is also really getting to young people about, no matter how bad it is, they've got to have people they can talk to, right? And I know it's not that simple, but like I go to say the vulnerabilities around just social media and things like that is definitely something to, to be aware of. A lot of stuff too sometimes is just tension in the home. We were working with a lot of families that are struggling because of finances, struggling because of marital conflict, struggling because of all kinds of things. And kids are just like, I can't do this anymore, I'm out. And so they run away without a plan, right? And they find themselves out there on the street, which creates some vulnerability. Also, a lot of kids that are isolated for a variety of different reasons, right? Don't fit in. Ori talked about, being bullied in school and feeling insecure and just all those things, that being rejected by her mother, just things sometimes. And so again, sometimes those are the things that, create vulnerabilities in young people starting to have those runaway behaviors. And also just a lack of resources and basic needs support. I will say that when we did to work on the 5-year strategic plan for Los Angeles, we spoke with 150 parents from 7 different school districts in Los Angeles. And one of the biggest things that they talked about, and so great, I've got you guys on the phone today. One of the biggest things they talked about is when their kids started to struggle and things started to spiral downhill, they would go to the school and ask for resources. And one of two things happened. The school either said, I don't know what they are. And the other one was that they gave them a whole packet of resources, a list of resources, and the parent being so overwhelmed, they're like, I can't even make a phone call. You know what I mean? So a lot of times what we're trying to do is say, here's a parent partner, here's a parent advocate, here's their card, call them, they can help you walk through that and kind of do some hand holding. Because the parents were trying to reach out to figure out, and a lot of parents said that the only way they were able to get support is if their kid was involved with CPS, Child Protection Services, or child welfare, however you call it in your state. You know what I mean? And so really trying to, know what the resources are, know what some of those needs are to be able to be helpful. And also just teenagers, got some grandkids and, they're all cuddly and they don't want you to ever be away from them. And then they get to be older and they push you away, just that whole adolescent development stuff. But a lot of kids, when they're looking for love, connection, and affirmation. And some of our kids are, parents, we, are so busy and they've got so much going on and their own stressors and things like that, just don't have time. So kids are seeking it in other places. And so again, those are some of the things that start again with some of those risk factors and vulnerabilities of kids starting to do some runaway behaviors or feel like they're more disconnected. And also when they start to hit those teenage years, their peers seem to have a little bit more influence than the parents do if that foundation hasn't really been created or put together. Some of the pathways to entry, like how does this happen? One of them is, unfortunately, parents who are exploiting their children. That probably for me in the work has been the hardest to comprehend. We had a father who stayed at home, was a tech guy. His wife died a few years prior, and he had a 13 and a 15-year-old daughter who he was advertising online that would come to the house and have sex with his daughters. I won't tell you the gruesome details of all that. But anyway, a mother of a 12-year-old boy who dropped him off at a drug house every day, and they sold him for sex, and in exchange she got drugs to support her drug habit. Just all kinds of things, unfortunately, around parents that have been involved in the selling of their children. And this is Russell Wilson, not the football player Russell Wilson, but a gentleman up in Northern California who has been very active in this space and was a victim impacted by child trafficking as a young man. So I'm going to play his video real quick, and he's just going to tell you a little bit about his story.
So my first trafficker was my mother, who started selling me to the landlord. And the landlord was part of a pedophile ring. This all became very normal for me, when I reported it to my mom and she did nothing about it. I realized that nobody was going to ever do anything about this. So by the time I was 9 years old, my behavior became so difficult and just outrageous for my mother to deal with, and for schools and just in general. The emotional trauma of what I've been going through manifested in really extreme behavior problems. And so I ended up in foster homes, eventually in group homes, because even foster homes weren't well equipped to deal with a child like me. In group home, I was abused there by some of the older boys, and one of them in particular started pimping me in the streets. So I've been pimp trafficked, familial trafficked, and then by the time I was 18 and I was on the streets on my own and had no pimp, I was survival sex and having to do whatever I could to survive in that space. So young men and boys and grown men who have experienced this, we shut down. We do not talk about this. And we will overcompensate and become overly male, overly aggressive, overly violent, and really not disconnect from our emotions. Later on, when I was being trafficked on the streets, there were times when I would come to the emergency room. I had broken ribs and I had been raped and by my trafficker because I didn't comply. I'm living on the streets. I'm dressed kind of dirty clothes. I obviously hadn't washed, and nobody asked, how did this happen to you? They just, saw me as one of those street kids, who is part of the problem of society. The difficulty for healthcare workers is really challenging. And you can't even really rely on just one red flag. Plenty of perfectly normal, healthy kids may exhibit one red flag. It's multiple red flags that then begin to start to trigger, like, we need to look deeper into this. I think ultimately what I'd like to leave people with is that if you don't know to look for something, you're never going to see it. So if you're not looking for boys as potential victims of trafficking, you're never going to find a boy. He could be sitting right in front of you. You're never going to even think about him being a possible victim of trafficking.
So that's Russell. One of the other pathways is peer recruitment. And we've, a lot of our foster care programs, even schools, have been really that's been the thing that they've been looking at is peers recruiting their peers. And one of the things I will say to that is, yes, that absolutely does happen because they have access to each other, not because they're bad kids. A lot of times we've talked with a lot of these young women and they're like, they're being trafficked but under duress because the exploiter knows that you have access to your peers. And if you do A, B, and C and bring them out, that I'll drop your quota, or you don't have to work the weekends, or you're in, better favor with me, all this kind of stuff. And, and I'm sorry I'm bringing you guys into it, but I'm trying to stay alive and do what I need to do to stay in favor. So it's a tricky situation, but a lot of times there definitely is peer recruitment because of just the basic access they have to each other. I'm going to play one other quick video on this because I think the videos really have a lot, or speak volumes to a lot of this. One of the things that we did when I was the director of the child trafficking unit is we did a yearly empowerment conference for about 30 of our girls. And we would go up into the mountains and we'd camp for 3 days, and we'd have adult women survivors come and provide, keynote speeches and workshops for the kids, and just let them, those with lived experience, let them kind of, connect with younger people. Because again, if you've got that lived experience, sometimes our young people are like, you get me, right? And then there would be us allies. Well, we had a panel of survivors. This is one of the survivors, Christina. And we had a panel, and the kids got to ask them questions. And this was a piece of one of the youth asking them, what do you regret most about your exploitation, or what was your biggest regret? And so this is her kind of talking a little bit about what her biggest regret was.
In Vegas working, not with me, but with another young lady we were working with. But I recently seen her about 3 months ago, maybe 2 months ago, and I felt so bad because I felt like I ruined her life. Like, I'm way older than you, and I felt like I should have been able to stand up to this man and tell him, like, no, this is wrong, we need to take her somewhere. But I felt like we were working and I exploited her too. So that's very like something that I have problems with even to this day. So when I seen the girl at the liquor store, I kind of got all excited, like, oh my gosh, Amanda, hey, I'm so sorry. And the girl acted like she didn't know me. She said, I don't know you, I've never seen you before in my life, like, and I was like, but your name's Amanda Fraser Brown. She's like, no, that's not my name, my name's Christina. And I'm like, that's my name. And she's like, well, that's my name. And I'm like, okay, well, you look like somebody I know, but I'm sorry if you're not Amanda Fraser Brown. I just apologized to her anyways because I knew that was her. I know you. You know what I'm saying? But if you want to be Christina, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not Christina today. But I apologized to her. Now, whether she took it and rolled with it, I don't know what happened from that. But to see somebody that you work with and to know that I messed up their life, and I can't get that moment back, that right there is heartbreaking. And to have this young lady in the car with me when I'm going to go give birth to my baby, and like, I'm gonna be an auntie and all this stuff like that, and I'm looking at her like, I don't even know you, but okay, that right there, yeah, I suffer from that every day. I feel very bad. And that's why when I work with young women, I try to give my all in my job and whatever it is I'm doing, whether I'm getting paid for it, if I'm not getting paid for it, because I truly feel bad for messing up this young lady's life. And if it was up to me, she could have been something better than what she is today. Like, she's a street, not saying she's a streetwalker, I don't know what she is, but from the looks of where I'm seeing her, I know she's not in school. I know she's probably still living life doing something. And to think that if I was strong enough to tell this man that he didn't have to do that, I could have saved her like months before. I could have saved her from jail. I could have saved her from being locked up. I could have saved her, and I didn't. And like, that's like my biggest regret in this life. Not me having a baby in a life, not nothing, but me affecting this young lady and me not having a voice to stand up for her. Like, that is affected, like, for real. So yeah, I'm still.
Yeah, I told you this wasn't going to be easy. We also had this happen at one of our high schools down here, is that you know, right before summer hit, there was all these job postings going up. You know, the FBI got involved, and it was connected to a sex trafficking ring where they were offering kids, you know, again, after school, weekends, $300 a week, transportation provided, you know, things like that. We also had a situation where some of the exploiters were connecting with high school boys, and they were letting them know for every girl they would bring out to a drop-off point that they would give the young man $150. So again, I know these young men didn't have a clue probably what was going on at the time, but they're like, hey, you want to go to lunch? You know what I mean? And you end up in this place, right? And they're getting paid. So there has been some things that have happened around school sites, where, you know, through education and through awareness, schools have been able to like instantly try to figure out what is going on, or at least call law enforcement or call somebody to figure out what's going on, just because of some of their awareness. And just, if it just doesn't feel right, you know, do something about it. Also, homelessness is a pathway, because again, basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, and kids become homeless for a variety of reasons. Also, violence and kidnapping. We've had, you know, throughout my time doing the work in Los Angeles, it feels like we were in Las Vegas probably every month bringing our kids back home. Just because of, you know, I would say that unfortunately Vegas is probably one of the trafficking meccas of the world for kids, on the West Coast for sure. But sometimes these kids are not going there out of coercion, but basically violence and kidnapping. And so that does happen, and that is a pathway. Also, another thing that has come up in recent time is gang involvement. A lot of the exploiters are connected to gangs. It's kind of, you know, gangs have kind of said it's easier to sell, you know, kids than sell dope, because your evidence is a 13-year-old that probably won't testify. But if you've got a trunk full of dope, you know, there's your evidence, right? And one of the articles we found is how female gang members are helping street gangs make big money in the sex trade. So girls were usually the girlfriends of the guys in the gang, right? And they weren't usually on the corner selling dope or selling dope wherever. But now girls can go out and have sex in exchange for money to then bring money into the gang. So they've now found a way to where girls can have a bigger, you know, we're out selling dope, you're going to go out and sell sex, right? So it's kind of that dynamic as well as starting to kind of come to the surface. Some of the identification points. One of the things that was a dead giveaway, we did some training back in 2011 for LAUSD school district. And it, you know, a lot of the teachers are like, what are you talking about? And the moment we started showing some of these tattoos and branding, they're like, I've got kids in my class. You know what I mean? They just started talking. And a lot of times, and again, I don't know what the climate looks like in Nevada, but I know a lot of times it's about branding. You know, this person belongs to so-and-so, or this girl with the cream around her eyebrows is cash rules everything around me. It can be dollar signs, it can be crowns, it can be a lot of different things. And usually kids are branded around their face or neck where it's visible. And there's nothing wrong with branding, except for, you know, try to get a job when your face has been tatted up, you know what I mean, sometimes is difficult, and that's very intentional a lot of times for exploiters and branding. So that definitely could mean something with regards to that. Here again is some, you know, things that reference cash, like you say, dollar signs. This young woman here, we took her to a WNBA game one day, and I felt so bad for her. And she wore a hoodie and tried to disguise because people just couldn't quit staring at her. You know what I mean? And how do you get past that? You know what I mean? To kind of, you know, and so I think sometimes that's really defeating for a lot of young people, is just, you know, the branding that happens in that respect. The other thing is sometimes these kids, and Ori talked about being sexually abused, but just a lot of these kids have some trauma histories. We did a study at the 6-year mark of our law enforcement first responder protocol, and of the 561 youth who had been recovered from that protocol, they had over 6,400 child abuse referrals. It's a lot of trauma. And so again, sometimes that trauma is what creates vulnerabilities and things like that, that eventually, you know, for some of our young people end up being trafficked. Things for schools, specifically attendance issues, you know, skipping classes, leaving schools. We're working with a lot of families right now whose parents are frustrated because they drop them off at school, but they don't go to class, right? They're leaving, they're in some classes, out of some classes, those kinds of things. So people are picking them up. You know what I mean? Things like that. And I would say that schools sometimes are the biggest line of defense because, you know, most of these kids sit in a classroom somewhere. And when kids are missing and you're calling the parent saying, hey, where's your child? And they say, well, they're missing. You know, that's something to think about. Why are they missing? You know, what's going on? You know, we talked about a lot of the vulnerabilities and things like that. And it doesn't always mean they're being trafficked, but they're at high risk for exploitation for sure. Some of the behavioral changes become withdrawn, very quiet, very anxious, you know, those kinds of things. So you kind of know your kids. They have like a baseline, and if they're high, you pay attention. And if they're really low, you kind of pay attention because, you know, because of the highs and lows. Also, any physical signs such as bruises, cuts, burns, like I say, branding, things that just don't seem right or seem out of place. The other thing that we hear a lot from parents is my daughter or my son comes home and they have expensive things that I didn't buy them, or they have an additional cell phone that I'm not paying for, right? Those kinds of things sometimes, and that could just be grooming. That could be grooming, or that could be that they're actually being exploited and someone else is paying for those things for them, right? So just a few other ideas on that. What schools can do. And then I'll run through the rest of this part, and then I'll take some questions and answers at the end. What are some of the things schools can do? I would say one of the biggest things is get educated, like you're doing right now. I think the more we know, then the more we know to look out for things. One of the things that, and I don't know if I gave it to Lydia or not, but we do a lot of training here in Los Angeles, and because of COVID, it's all pretty much virtual now. So all you have to do is sign up, show up virtually like you're doing right now, and they do a lot of training. So I will send her the link for that. And there are people across the country that tap into this, and they are trainers that are subject matter experts on a lot of different things from across the country. So these aren't just LA-based trainers. These are people from across the country that do training around Native communities or social media or peer recruitment or whatever it is. So I think that is one of the things that's big, is just getting educated. Also, there's a ton of books out there that you could read if you're a reader. There's lots of books out there, a lot of them written by survivors for educational purposes and things like that. So if you're interested in any of that, I will also send her this book list. But if you're a reader, it would be great to, again, education, you can never go wrong with that. The other thing I think is, again, just going from that previous slide, is just remember that trauma takes time. I remember being a probation officer on a junior high school campus, and I had brothers that were on informal probation that I would check in with, and one was a 11th grader, one was a 12th grader, and one of the young men, because of the trauma that was going on in their lives and at home, he would just be quiet. The teachers loved that, and his brother would act everything out, which we hate. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, however they're dealing with stuff that's going on with them, they might be really aggressive and vocal and struggling and acting it out, or they may just be the kid that's silent. And to me, that's probably the most dangerous, because you just don't know what they're thinking, right? At least if they're acting out, you try to get underneath the surface about what is all this behavior coming from, right? Or what's going on with this young person. So just remember that trauma takes time. I can't I can't see anybody, and I can't see anything, so maybe I'll ask the host to tell me, but have any of you seen this video? I didn't put it on to play today, but I could send a link, called "I Wish My Teacher Knew." Or
Give us a
anybody?
thumbs up if you've seen
Yeah.
it, unmute yourselves, whatever, put it in
Yeah.
the chat.
Yeah. If you've seen this video, I wish my teacher knew.
We have 1, 2 people, 3, 4,
Okay.
5, 6, 7.
Are
So
they
at
saying
least
they've
half.
seen it? They've seen it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good. Lori
Awesome.
said no.
Yeah.
Greg,
Okay,
no.
good. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, and again, it's interesting. It's a teacher that at the beginning of the year had her students say, "What are some of the things you wish I knew before we get started during the year?" Right. And so a couple of the things, it's a very moving video. A couple of the things that came up was that my family is not always supportive of me, and being at school is the highlight of my day. That sometimes I have to prioritize my safety over homework. I get 3 hours of sleep per night, and that I cry myself to sleep most nights because of the stress on top of other reasons or things like that. So sometimes kids, again, we come to teach, we come to do, but sometimes these kids come and they probably spend more time with you than they do at home. With parents that are awake. Usually when they get home, it's homework, dinner, and bedtime. You know what I mean? So again, trying to really look underneath the surface and kind of seeing what's going on. I know a lot of young people who have always said, and they're bright and they're smart, and they said school was that safe place for them that felt like not chaotic and things like that. You know what I mean? And they loved it, even though sometimes they just weren't always present or didn't have things done that they were supposed to have done. But I think school is kind of like that safety net for a lot of young people. And a lot of our young people have found kind of champions and people that they can connect with within the schools. This is just a quick little PSA. This is something that we did. We had some young people. These are all actors, so they're not real victims, but just kind of do some little quick PSA things for for community and for schools. So I just wanted to play this one for you. It's regarding schools.
To my teachers, have you noticed my hot new purse? My earrings? This necklace? It's not wrong to have this stuff, but it could mean something. These are signs. You see us almost every day, more than anyone, like 1,000 times more than my parents. I know you're looking, but do you see? See who seems lost or distracted or has some new tattoo. I know you don't want to pry. I get it. This child trafficking thing, they're targeting kids like me. Even your most favorite kids in class, they're targeting them too. But if you don't see, who will? Maybe someone. Maybe no one. It's not just me they're after. What about her? Or him? Or them? Something's happening here. Child trafficking is happening right here. It's in our neighborhoods, our homes, on the internet, and in our classrooms. And I'm asking you to see me. See us. Hear us. Empower us. Because the more we know to say no. Learn the signs to look for and how to help at notosayno.com.
So that's just a little campaign that we did. And I would also say that any chance you get, and I say this to everybody that we do training with, is recognize, affirm, and celebrate the small stuff. A lot of these kids need to win. And so, if it's, I remember in our court when we would have kids that would be in foster care or even at home, and they would make it through school for a week, we would celebrate that. If they stayed in foster care for 2 weeks, we celebrated that. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of times some of these kids that are really struggling, they just hear all this negativity, like, what's wrong with you? Or why didn't you get to school? Or, you can't quit, you can't miss school anymore. Or why you keep running away? So it's all this negative stuff instead of, again, not giving that it's a pass. You need to talk to young people, but how much do we really recognize and affirm, and also try to do some balance on that? We did one of the things that we also did that I just wanted to highlight here is as we were doing the trafficking unit work, a lot of the kids, because we were learning and we were just really trying to overcompensate about, making sure you're safe. And every conversation we had with you was about your trafficking experience. And one day, one of the youth went to one of the probation officers and said, "Do you see anything about me other than me being a trafficking victim?" And what we realized is that a lot of these young people wanted us to see their talent and see them beyond their experience. And so we had to kind of take a step back, and we started to kind of do things a little bit different, because I think we were kind of holding them back from getting past their past, because we were always putting it out in front for them, and they're doing some amazing things, right? And so we one of these experiences here, you'll see this young woman up here on the left upper top. She's looking in the aquarium. We went to Long Beach Aquarium for an empowerment activity, and she was 16 years old, and she went back and told her community advocate that she just loved the sea life, and she just really wanted to work with animals in the ocean. So fast forward 2023, I think it was, or 2021. This post came from one of the advocacy agencies that we work with, and this young woman 2023 walked across the stage at Cal State Long Beach with her degree, her bachelor's degree in marine biology. And now she works out in the ocean, which is really cool. And again, it's about people listening to trying to help kids get to the next step. That's what all of you do, is trying to get them educated in their education so they can get to that next step. But that's just the power of people stepping up for young people in any way we can. I would say that focus on building relationships and of support is probably the best prevention these kids could have. Because if they aren't connected to their parents, or they're struggling at home, they're with you, right? They're connected to you somehow in a classroom, not on the football field, in a counseling session, whatever it is. But I know that, the number one intervention is relationships. As we talked about before, show up, care, connect, and affirm. How many of you, I'm going to ask this real quick. Well, I'm going to show it just because this is kind of where I'm going to end this. But how many of you, actually, let's hear it by thumbs up or in the chat. How many of you have heard one caring adult?
We have one. Just one.
Okay, perfect. I love it. Okay. So this is my best thing. This will be the best video today. Here we go. Well, they're all great. Okay. But a good note to leave you on.
I tried to kill myself with a bottle of pills. And the fact of the matter is I trusted no one. And looking back, I guess how could I? From the time my parents left me, to the time another foster kid raped me, to the time I was bullied so bad, I genuinely could not fathom a world where I could trust anybody. So fast forward, here I am, 14 years old, and entering my umpteenth foster home. I was a veteran at this whole sort of getting kicked out of one home, moved to the next. You meet these people who were like literally complete and total strangers 10 minutes ago, who are now apparently your mom and dad. Kids don't take candy from strangers, just move in with them. So I'm sitting in the van, in the driveway of this next home, and that's when I see Rodney. He's standing up there on the front porch, and immediately I notice, this is a large fella. He's 6'5", he's 350 pounds, and as a 14-year-old boy, I couldn't help but notice, when he's turned to the side like that, he's shaped like a lowercase b. It's amusing now, but in the moment it was tactical. Maybe that's how I could get kicked out of this home. Maybe I could get under his skin about his weight. So I move in with him. I'm being obnoxious, I'm being ungrateful, I'm being just downright rude and mean, I'm setting things on fire, and 3 years later, I can't shake this guy. Rodney won't kick me out. So I step up my game. I go to the local bank in town, I open up a checking account. I put about $90 in there. Then I proceed to write $10,000 worth of checks. Obviously, checks bouncing one after the next, One check that bounced was for my car insurance. I'm going down the road speeding, Stillwater, Oklahoma, 88 miles an hour. No car insurance, no driver's license. I get pulled over, handcuffed, thrown in the back of a cop car, and sent to jail. I call Rodney. Like, Rodney, I'm in Stillwater, I'm in jail, I'll tell you the whole thing when you get here. Can you please come bail me out tonight? He said, I will come bail you out, but not till tomorrow. Rodney frustratingly believed sometimes one of the most loving things you could do for a kid was allow them to sit in either the success of their wonderful choice or the stupidity of their foolish choice. Next morning, he comes, bails me out, exactly as promised. We have a long, very awkward car ride home. No one says anything. We get back to the house. He's like, we need to sit down and talk. And I knew this moment had finally come. So Rodney, his wife, sit me down to give me the talk I've had a dozen times. He looks in my eyes and says, son, you can keep causing problems. You can keep trying to mess up. You can keep pushing us away. You can keep trying to get us to kick you out of here, but you've got to get it through your thick head, son. We don't see you as a problem. We see you as an opportunity. And in that moment, all my skepticism came to the surface. And I thought, what a cheesy, stupid thing to say to a 17-year-old kid. But then I was overwhelmed with the reality that this guy actually meant it. He didn't see what I was, what was on the surface, the obnoxious kid, the ungrateful kid, the kid getting suspended. He saw what I could be. It was genuinely my turning point. Statistically, I am supposed to be dead, in jail, or homeless. But because of one caring adult. I'm not a statistic. Every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. Every child who winds up doing well has had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult. My friend and mentor, Reggie Joyner, taught me to think about it this way. In this jar are 936 marbles. Each one of these marbles represents a single week from the birth of a kid until that kid turns 18 years old. So if you know a 9-year-old, you've only got 468 marbles, or weeks, however you want to look at it, remaining. You know a 16-year-old? You got 104 marbles remaining. Right here, we are looking at time. In fact, you're looking at all the time or all of the weeks you have left to influence this kid, or this kid before they turn 18 and begin making critical life decisions without your presence. The difference between a statistic and a success story is you.
So I love that. So just a last quick thing. I'm just going to do a shameless plug again for the organization I work with, Finding Kids. I talked a little bit about that in the beginning. I don't know if anybody on this call is from Northern California, Washoe area, whatever, but that's the area we work. If you know of missing kids or use us as a resource for parents, we provide aftercare services for families that include all kinds of restoration funds, gas support, rent support, family fun time support, whatever. Also for young people, we do the same. We just supported a young person and paid half of her tuition to start medical school, which was one of our kids from 2022. I've been paying $180 a month for 18 months for a young girl who wanted to really be in vocal lessons, but her parents just didn't have the additional funding to support vocal lessons. Also bought a young man about this past summer a motorcycle so that he could be a part of a community boys program where they went up into the mountains and did dirt bike riding and stuff, and he couldn't go because he didn't have a dirt bike. So, really trying to help, dig into kids' interests and do some things and help support families, and also support treatment options and stuff like that for parents who are also in some of those places. Also, one of the things I wanted to talk about, I talked about a little bit if you were on the call last time. I had the opportunity of working with about 7 survivors from across the state of California and the country to create a curriculum specifically for girls impacted by exploitation called Becoming Me. And we are working right now with Las Vegas or Clark County CPS to bring that training to Clark County sometime, I think, in May. So if you're interested in that, Lydia can tell you how to get a hold of me. And you can let me know, and we'll make sure that you get an invite when that comes out. It's free, so it's no cost. And then we also created early on a curriculum called Word on the Street, because again, we were focused on girls. You can tell that right now. Called Educating and Empowering Young Women and Girls, and it was really a prevention curriculum, 4 short workbooks. If you are interested in that, I can send that to you for free. I can just send it to you now, and you can just let Lydia know, or I can, give it to her, and she can she can send that to you. We're also, remember Russell Wilson we talked about earlier today that was exploited by his mother started. I'm working with him and 6 other men from across the country to develop a curriculum for young men to really cover more around sexual abuse and exploitation. And we're working on that this year in 2026. So more to come on that. But just a couple of ideas if you're interested in any of that. And I think what I'll do now is I'll just stop sharing and I will come back on camera and see everybody and just see if there's any questions for me, comments. Again, please take care of